Oh, hello. Well, that seems to have changed that. So let's start the show, shall we? I'm Greg, aka Cookbook Thor, and welcome to Yinz Dahn to Listum, where I invite friends to rank various topics along with me because it's much more fun that way. And today's subject spans all of time and space, so I knew I needed a lot of extra help to tackle it. And that subject is the 10 Doctors of Doctor Who, and that help is in the form of my friends from the Geekville Radio podcast. First up is a UK native with a great deal of personal experience with the Doctor Who franchise, and you may have even seen him providing his expertise on TV alongside the Facts of Life's Lisa Welchel on the MeTV series Collector's Call. Welcome, Mark Short.
Good evening, morning, wherever you're watching this. The internet is worldwide in 24 hours.
Indeed it is, and we are richer for it. And second is a fella I first became pals with on a long defunct pro wrestling message board some 25 years ago. Does it feel like 25 years?
No, it feels more like 25 months, but but I got to say, we're all old men here, and I think we all still look pretty good for our age. So
Speak for yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just a number.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
He is the captain of the starship that is Geekville Radio. This is Seth Zillmann, and I'm glad to have you here, Seth.
yeah, and both of you guys are responsible, or I guess responsible is the word to use, but you were the two guys that got me into Doctor Who, and I don't want to spend too much time on the intro here, but to give you an idea, I kept meaning to get into Doctor Who, and I'd ask you questions and things like that. I still remember when Eccleston, when we first got the publicity shot of Eccleston in uniform, and I was like, "What? No scarf?" And you said only Tom Baker is allowed to wear the scarf. Anybody else would be sacrilegious. And it kind of went from them. But when I finally decided, all right, I'm going to get into Doctor Who, I did something I never would have been able to do back in the old days, and before pre-internet, which is I went back to Hartnell and I watched it all, going all through because through Daily Motion and a lot of the other video sites, I was able to watch this stuff and got through. I even watched the missing stuff. So like when stuff like Enemy of the World came out, I was like, cool. I saw that. I loved this on the reconstruction, and then I got to see it and then obviously when I got to the modern stuff, it was all on Netflix, and that made it very easy. But so my brain was all Swiss cheesed in. So I got all of the doctors are, they're all living in my head in some shape or fashion. So I think that makes me qualified for this list, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Oh, I certainly agree. Yeah. Yes. So we are assembled here to share with all of you out there our top 10 incarnations of our favorite Time Lord and yours. Probably our favorite. You could have another favorite, but it's unlikely the Doctor. Yes, Mark's got the list. He's prepared.
Number one.
No,
I don't want to spoil anything too much, but I think we're all going to have the same guy at number one. But yeah.
I feel I need to give my criteria here because it isn't just about. I didn't want it to be who I grew up with because that's automatically, unfortunately, I think the way it's going to go to an extent. But I also wanted to add, it's not just the actor, it's the performance, obviously, but it's also the script and the production as a whole. So that's how I came to my list.
Absolutely. Yeah, they all combine to form the I suppose the performance really. There's a lot of factors that go in there, and good scripts, good production values, various things can certainly sway a ranking up or down, I would say. So
and there is going to be, when we talk about that stuff, there are some here that are influenced by the Big Finish releases, because Big Finish has had a lot of good stuff out there. That's so. Alrighty, I guess I'll the host hands here. Start us off.
All right. Yes, we have our lists. We are ready. And if by chance we got them horribly wrong, then you can leave us your own top 10 list down in the comments section below. But let's get started, shall we? Mark, what's your number 10?
Well, number 10 is Armageddon. When I came into this country, I moved here in 95. Obviously, Doctor Who was in a wasteland. I finished it in 1989. I remember running my first Doctor Who convention. Actually, I did my second one. I ran one and I called it The End of an Era. And people lambasted me. They said, no, Doctor Who's coming back. All the fans were very angry at me. And I said, I don't think so. And of course, we had JNT, Colin Baker, Nicola Bryant, some others, all in the east coast of England. And the general feeling was it would come back, but certainly not as the old show. And of course, Paul McGann brought it back. I feel that was very sensible having an English guy help make it, English doctor, and then most importantly, a great villain in the form of the Master. But as we all know, there were several problems with it, and that's why it probably didn't go to series. Number one, of course, is that they put it out against the Super Bowl, which is probably the stupidest decision ever. But
God, yes.
I like McGann as an actor. I really like the costume, and he's done some terrific work. Going to conventions, having that extra little 5-minute footage thing with the new costume and the sonic screwdriver. So yeah, I think Paul McGann is my number 10.
Excellent choice. And Seth, what have you?
All right. I have on my number 10, believe it or not, I got the original. That's where I put Hartnell. And I think part of the reason for that is there really wasn't anything permanent to the lore. The lore really didn't start until really, I think, the end of Pertwee's run, really. So
Mhm.
he was just kind of the weird old man that was, grouchy all the time and this and that. And there's some great stuff, in those in that era. But I think it's because the show was finding its footing and didn't quite really become what it would become. That's kind of where I put him. I mean, he was great for where he was great for the portrayal that they wanted. But when you look at it as far as what the Doctor's become, uh, I think his portrayal doesn't quite fit that. But again, it can also be explained that he lived another dozen lives and he got smarter.
How many lives have you lived, Doctor? Yes, indeed. That is an excellent choice. And you know what?
Hartnell was low on my list too. He would essentially have been number 12 on mine. I started watching the show in like 1977, 78, and I lived through those English repeats in 1981 called The Five Faces of Doctor Who. And I've got to tell
Mhm.
you, I never really liked the black and white years as much as I like the color. And I think he did an amazing job, and certainly Doctor Who wouldn't have made it into those first 10 years without a good performance from him.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned you had Hartnell at 12. That's where I had McGann.
yeah,
So,
so it's very strange to myself that he was so low down the list on mine. But I'm ready to hear your number 10, Greg.
My number 10. Well, this is where I would set off some sort of alarm. I'm still working on what sort of alarm to do, but I'll just
number
buzz my sonic
10.
screwdriver because my number 10 is also Eighth Doctor Paul McGann.
Ah,
And,
Really?
I picked him, although, to be honest, I'm not a fan of overt Doctor Companion romance for the most part. And his time is kind of where that started, but I see that as more due to the content restrictions of what his predecessors were able to do. Whereas, they may have wanted to do it, but just weren't able. And he made it work. And Paul McGann is a fine performer. And Night of the Doctor alone made me want a full season of him.
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And I will say
Mhm.
the actress that she slips in my mind now, but I think the actress that was the companion in that movie, I thought she did a great job as well.
So
Oh, she was great. She sold that so well. Yeah.
something that me and Seth have discussed. This is maybe like 5, 6, 7 years ago on Examining the Doctor. Is that should have had a separate production arm where you got a full season in the first half of the year of Doctor Who, and then the second half of the year should have been an entirely separate production company making the McGann series. It was,
Hmm.
Hmm.
and he's gotten older and older and older, and I fear that we're running out of time to do that now. But that everybody would have watched it. Everybody. I think it's a massive opportunity.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, he's the only Doctor Who actor that I have met in person, and he told me he'd be down to do it. I said, "I love Night of the
Yeah.
Doctor. I hope we get you back," and he said, "Fingers crossed, fingers crossed." So,
And one other
yeah.
thing, one other thing I'll add to about the romance thing with McGann, because it's another thing Mark had said. One of our, what might have been the actual first show we all did on Doctor Who back when when it was Geekville Radio, just before Examining the Doctor happened. Where Mark, you had said something like the concept of the Doctor falling in love with somebody just wouldn't, because it'd be like a god looking down to an ant saying, "Hello, ant, please come up to my level," and like all
Right.
those years of the companion, you never really thought it would be a romance thing. It never felt like it to me,
I
even after going through all those.
never had an issue with the romance. The falling in and out of romance at an episode's notice, though, is very boring to me. The Doctor, as he's always played it, kind of like is above the companion in almost every, and it's very much more a maternal relationship, and that's the one that I much prefer.
Yeah, almost
I would
like
tend to
a
agree.
teacher-student.
Yep. Yeah, and you've got the half human thing, which was kind of a mistake, but we could almost argue that that's been solved now thanks to Neil Patrick Harris. That he solved the Toymaker solved continuity by making a jigsaw, and so anytime you see something like that, Neil Patrick Harris did it.
And that is one of the
that's
few things I will sing the praises of for the modern show is Neil Patrick Harris as the Toymaker. I thought was a really good idea.
yes, he was very good, and he solved continuity. Yes.
So that's our number 10. What we got for number 9?
Number 9. Well, what have you got, Mark?
So number 9, I don't know if this could be a shock. Peter Capaldi. One of the things that I love is that someone who loved Doctor Who that much got to be a part of it. And I know for myself, having run conventions and then being involved in 1993's more than 30 years in the TARDIS, I always look back on that era as being really one of my favourite years. And I know for Capaldi, he was such a huge fan, was in the fan club, and then imagine that you work so hard to be an actor, and then you get to be Doctor Who, and it came in the performance. He gave a wonderful performance as the Doctor, but what let him down was a terrible script. You can go back on Examine the Doctor, and I talk about it all the time. I didn't enjoy the episodes. All I could do was put his Doctor in some of my favourite episodes, and they would have been fantastic. But listen, one of the greatest Doctor Who episodes ever is that the one where he had to keep pounding the wall. Is that one Heaven Sent?
Heaven Sent, yes.
The only Doctor Who episode I ever cried. The only episode that I shouted out in the living room. About 5 minutes before it happened, I said, "Oh my goodness, he's trapped in this time thing for," I said thousands of years. I didn't know it was going to be billions of years. That was one of the great moments of Doctor Who for me. And so I wish he was further higher up the list, but he's got a huge drag factor on him. Number 9 is Peter.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my number 9, I know this might not make Mark too happy for number 9. That's where I have Colin Baker. And to be brutally honest, I think it's one of those things. Again, I was talking about influenced by the Big Finish audio stories. He's done some great stuff in Big Finish. I mean, I hate to say it, he might not have made my top 10 if I hadn't heard the Big Finish stuff, because there was that first year where, I mean, he was made to be annoying. I mean, and now Mark was the one that told me that was the idea, is he was supposed to be this psychologically broken person, and then slowly over the course of his run, he'd be back to being the Doctor that we knew and loved. And he's got some great stuff.
The costume would have been worked out. The attitude would have been worked out. And because that whole era is broken because they cancelled the show, it never got to do what it was meant to do. Plus, also at the time, Doctor Who, that concept was too complicated for that time of Doctor Who.
Right.
But I am saddened by your choice there.
Well, Mark, I hope I don't pile onto the sadness too much, because it's time for another match, because my number 9 is also Colin Baker.
And I'd like to introduce our special guest, Colin Baker.
Yeah. I will say, I find him much easier to digest if you don't watch the Twin Dilemma, because it's really one of the weaker starting episodes for a doctor. It had some
I
bad
think,
ideas that just didn't click for me.
yeah, I think that
I
was
will put
actually
any
on the low.
episode of Nkuti Gatwa up against the Twin Dilemma, and Twin Dilemma will win.
Fair,
I think
fair.
I think that was voted way back when, because there's an episode I keep putting out every so often. I've done it for the National Podcast Post Month that I take part in every year, and I'll recycle that one where it's we go over the top and bottom 10 Doctor Who episodes. And I'm pretty sure the Twin Dilemma was like, it was dead last. It was like the bottom of, and it's like, and I you know, I guess I can kind of see why with that one. But yeah,
Hmm.
there's some of the modern
Yeah,
stuff that I would say is below it.
I would tend to agree. Yeah, it's low for classic series, but there's some stuff that has gone below it. Yeah, I could think of a few. Fear Her with David Tennant. I didn't like that one
Yeah.
too much. But yeah, we could go on. We could do a bottom 10 at some point. Maybe we will.
Yeah.
Just the dregs of Who. But
Yeah.
yeah, but Colin had some great stuff like Vengeance on Varos, and I thought Mind Warp, Trial of the Time Lord overall, I thought was pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, he
Yeah.
brought back Patrick Troughton and Fraser Hines with him for the two Doctors, and he would have been much better received if his pompousness was kind of shown to just be an act to throw people off, sort of like Patrick Troughton acting, playing dumb, you know.
Oh,
And if
we'll
he
get to
was
that.
really the same kind guy. Um,
Yeah. There
and if
was
he,
one moment in one of the Trial of the Time Lord episodes, and it is one of those moments I think it would fit, the kind of speech that goes through when they do the conventions. There's always the speeches that fans will, from one doctor, they'll have another doctor read or something like that. And
mm,
Colin Baker had one of those there where he's talking about it. The Daleks, they're barely out of the nursery compared to us. When he
mhm,
sees all the stuff that's really going on.
yep,
That is one of those doctor moments that is puts
mhm,
him up there with some of the greats.
sure, yeah, yeah, and that's yeah, it's sort of a wrinkle that it adds to the lore of the show that yeah, the Time Lords aren't benevolent, and that's been
Hmm.
recurring, from time to time. And yeah, it would have been nice if he got to wear the full blue suit from the start, because that looks really sharp when I've seen it. Although for
Hmm.
what it's worth, when I go to Comic Cons, Colin Baker is one of the more commonly cosplayed Doctors. I mean, I'll see David Tennant's, I'll see Matt Smith's, I'll see Tom Baker's, and then after that, Colin Baker is probably the one I see the most.
Yeah, I want to make a Colin Baker costume for what that's
I've
worth. I'd love to wear one.
collected, in my early career of collecting movie props and wardrobes, some of which you'll see behind me. In the early 90s, Colin Baker's costume was right up there. There were only 3 of those coats made. I had one of his white shirts with the red question marks on. But really, Doctor Who wise, that's one of my few regrets. I don't love that original costume, but what a task to make something tasteless and yet still in its own way beautiful. Because the way that thing was tailored was beautiful. But
I still remember going into my local comic book place. This is when I was getting into comics the first time around. It really started with G.I. Joe and such, but they had a big poster and it said, the sixth Doctor. And I looked at it, I'm like 12 years old or so, and I look at it, it's just like, is he trying to dress like the Riddler or the Joker? What's going on here? Because I was familiar with Tom Baker. I knew that look, and I'm like, why does he look so different? Is this a different guy? And of course, obviously, we know the
I
answers to all that
do
now. But
I do take on board everything you've said. I just disagree. Let's find out. Number 8.
Yes, number 8. What do you got, Mark?
Well, I got Matt Smith. I have always enjoyed his performance. Unfortunately, as we'll find, some of these doctors fall down because I wasn't as young when I watched him. That is a huge influence. I always loved the costume. I love the interaction with some of his companions, but I feel that character, the Raven episode, what was the name of that companion?
Yeah.
Capaldi, yeah, no. No, I never really. I liked her as an actress. I never really liked that character. I never really liked where they went with that. And of course, that influenced a lot. And see, Matt Smith's first season, I really enjoyed that. And then when we got to those little mini episodes where he rides the dinosaur and everything, when he gets really old, but you know, we have to thank Matt Smith for many things. One of them is River Song, who's truly one of the more well, David Tennant as well. But truly, the song with Matt Smith was just a gift to us all. And I got a story about Matt Smith, actually. I don't think I've ever told this to you, Seth. I was in London a couple of years ago, and I'm walking away from a prop store auction that me and the other half went to. And I walked down past the cathedral, and there's a gentleman. Nobody else is around. It's 11 o'clock at night. Very thin, tall gentleman with a suitcase walking towards us. And I looked at him, and I could tell he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and we were getting nearer and nearer and nearer. And as we get within 5 feet, that was bloody Matt Smith. I had to stop myself. I had to stop myself saying anything because I always said at a convention or on a set, a TV show shooting, it's okay to talk to these people. But this poor man has been on an aeroplane or he's been on a train for hours and hours. Here's me. I'm going to open up and I'm going to drive this guy. Oh my goodness me, Doctor Who, I love you. No, I couldn't do it. So I let him walk by, and then as he's walking away, I caught an acknowledgement from him just for a millisecond where he the nod was, I know that you know that I know that you know. But I really appreciate you didn't stop me.
Yeah.
I have to say that that was truly incredible. And I turned to my other half and I said,
Yeah.
Matt Smith. And he hadn't noticed at all. But that's my Matt Smith story, and that is one of the great moments of my life where I could have stopped him and had a 30-second conversation and said what a crazy Doctor Who fan I am, but instead warm inside, letting him continue to walk past me.
Well, that's
That is a good
awesome.
story, though.
That's very cool. Yeah, yeah. Matt Smith, his first episode and his last episode, I think, are my favorites of his run. I mean, I would put the 11th hour up there with pretty much any episode throughout the series where he established himself right from the get go, and it's a you know
Yeah.
awesome starter
Well,
episode if someone wants to get into the show. I recommend that one highly.
that's what I was about to add. Anytime you get the new Doctor, that's a good jumping on point for new viewers. And I don't know if that I think it's intentional now, but I don't know if it was intentional. I think it's just how it evolved, so to speak.
I will
You know.
refute you with 2 words:
Okay.
space babies.
Well played, sir. Well played.
So number 8,
Could use
right?
another twin dilemma, but we've been there, so yeah, no need to beat that horse.
All right, so
Who you
number
got,
8
Seth?
for me still, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Well, this is actually where I have Capaldi. And it was one of those, maybe it's over, maybe not. I don't know. But again, it comes to those times where his strong moments were really strong. There was that episode where he's talking to the Zygons that look like Clara, and he's trying to talk them all down out of war. I mean, that is
That's
just such an
superb.
amazing moment there. You could see just about any other Doctor. You could see Tom Baker doing that. You could see Peter Davison doing that. And again, that Heaven Sent episode. I mean, he is there. Clara's got a short cameo in that, but other than that, Peter's the only guy in that entire episode.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking to himself, but he does it in a way where it doesn't look like he doesn't look like he's talking to himself, even though he is. I hope you get what I mean by saying that. It
Mm-hmm.
takes a hell of an actor to be able to pull that off.
Yes.
And because Tom tried it and it didn't work as well. So
Yeah.
take that for what it's worth. So yeah, so I got Capaldi at 8. I know some people may say it's high. I don't know, but that's where I got him.
hmm and that is fair. Yeah. And my number 8 could be a controversial one depending on where you started watching the show, but my number 8 is David Tennant.
Mm.
And I mean, I kind of consider 10th Doctor and 14th Doctor the same thing because really they're the same
They are the
character,
same.
same personality. Just it was
I honestly
the
believe.
Redux.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I honestly believe they made the 14th Doctor so they can have Tennant come back every now and then.
Will you
Without having to
consider
say.
the 16th Doctor as part of the same thing?
Maybe.
Jury's still out on that, I guess. That could always be. She could always just. I fully expect. Well, I can't say I fully expect, but I think we're going to see Billy Piper, and then she's going to poof into somebody else. Hey, if Romana can control her regenerations,
let's just use this time here to address this. She's clearly the bad wolf. That's bottom. That's
yeah,
where they
that was
from
already
there.
established.
Where they go from there, who knows?
We shall see. And how long will it take? Yeah, maybe next Christmas before we find out. From what I'm hearing. Yeah. Yeah. But Tennant, you could tell being the Doctor was his lifelong dream. He brought such a vibrant energy to it. And he was the face of the show's kind of second golden age. And we can always thank him for that. And yeah, again, it depends on when you started watching because those who started during the modern era are probably angrily typing right now saying, "How could you put him so low?" And that's the beauty of it that we can each make our own lists, I suppose. But it was,
Absolutely.
this was not an easy list to make. So
It was
yeah, I
actually
mean,
real
if you have
simple
David
for
Tennant
me.
as your number one, I respect it. But
I think it'll be age. Age and wisdom does dictate this list.
certainly.
Mostly.
Yeah. And that brings us to number 7. What you got,
Well,
Larry?
I'm kind of surprised by my number 7 because it is David Tennant. I got a huge amount of respect for that man. I think that Doctor Who was on a precipice in a way. Imagine what really happened. And says, I'm done with it. It's at the peak and it had nothing but down to fall from that peak, just like the Reichenbach falls from Sherlock Holmes. And lo and behold, someone comes in, and just like every good doctor, he literally takes over within the first 5 minutes. I don't know why they did these things where the doctor had to wear a bathrobe for the first episode, and then he almost fought out of that silly costume, and and it's like the moment when he does Barcelona, oh, Barcelona. He's the doctor instantaneously. I feel comfortable when the doctor only has to say 2 or 3 seconds of acting, but he's already the doctor within that. And I felt comforted by Tennant. I've never ever really felt that he had any really truly bad episodes. I mean, Fear Her, I think, was one of them, wasn't it? There were a couple of bad ones. But what I loved about Tennant is that he instantaneously came back as the 14th, and it was like a warm hug, wasn't it? And in fact, I truly love those episodes when he had the doppelgangers, and that very. I actually do love those 3 episodes quite a lot, and I just feel that one with doppelgangers is one of the truly great New Who episodes. I just felt that was awesome. Never met the man. I'd love to shake his hand and just say thanks very much. He's just one of those Oh, the one that I love is the Davison crossover episode.
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's what led into the Kylie Minogue episode, I think, right?
I think so.
stunning piece of television. And then, something that I've used myself in just the real world is, you were my doctor. And in all honesty, that will come back into play a little bit later in this episode. So hang around for that. Yes, that would be my number Number 7 is David Tennant.
Yep.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, what you got, Seth?
All right. My number 7, it's also related because that's where I have Peter Davison. Because if anybody's listening to this who aren't the hardcore Doctor Who fans like we are, you may not know Peter Davison is actually David Tennant's father-in-law. So that's the that's the connection. So yes, the 5th Doctor is the father-in-law of the 10th Doctor. But I don't know if I could say anything about Peter Davison that fans don't already know. I think the only downside for me with Davison is I never understood the costume. I never got the cricket outfit. You know, I didn't even know it was a cricket outfit until after I started watching the show. And you know, when has the Doctor ever been into sports? And, you know, I know they did that one episode with him where he actually plays cricket, but he was the epitome of lawful good. And anybody who knows me and characters and wrestling today, it's how I like my superheroes. It's how I like my baby faces in wrestling. I always like the lawful good type, the one that's going to do the right thing no matter what. And that typifies Davison. And some people might be saying, well, why don't you have him higher up? We'll get to that. But you know, if Train were here, he'd say, Seth, you are so lawful good, you squeak when you walk. But yeah, that's why I like Davison. Is as soon as he walks, he's like, you know, this is the good guy, and he's not going to compromise who he is for anybody. That's the best thing I can say, I think, about the Davison era, is it was very much, this is the Doctor being the hero.
Yeah, he had some Stone Cold classics in his run. Yeah, Earth Shock and Caves of Rangers Annie.
There was the one there was that one where he was going to shoot Davros, and he couldn't bring himself to do it.
Resurrection
As evil as Davros was, yeah, it reminded me of the Magnum PI scene where he was where Magnum was confronting the murder of his friend, and the guy was like, you know, you'd never shoot me right here. If I was coming after you, yeah, you would. Now, if you watch that Magnum PI, you'll know that was the last scene. As Magnum just finally said, nope, boom. But Davison would never do that. You know?
Yep. And that leads me to my number 7, which is Christopher Eccleston. Now, I became a fan during what they call the wilderness years, after the show went on hiatus in 1989, and you know, before it came back in 2005. So when I knew it was coming back, that was probably the most excited I've ever been for a TV show returning, and probably the most excited I ever will be for a TV show returning. So yeah, I could not wait to see this show every week, and he never disappointed. I mean, obviously, I wish he would have stayed a little bit longer, but he was masterfully portrayed. You know, he hid all that trauma from the Time War behind his smile and that leather jacket. So, I mean, it was so good I didn't even mind that one of the most notorious villains was flatulent. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Did a great job.
He was fantastic. Yeah, I would love to meet him at a con someday.
Well, he does them. Yeah.
Yep. And so that brings us to number 6. What you got, Mark?
This is my real surprise, I feel. It's Jon Pertwee. I missed that Doctor growing up. He was in the era before, you know, I was like 7 or 8. Tom had been on for a couple of years, so I didn't see any Pertwee until the 1981 UK re-release, The Five Faces of Doctor Who. I met him a number of times at Doctor Who conventions between 1989 and 1993. I had the good fortune of interviewing him on stage for an hour. Afterwards, he said, "Thank you very much, Mark. That was a wonderful interview and one of the best I've ever done." I went to Nicholas Courtney a number of years later. Me and Nick got on like a house on fire. I interviewed him at least 4 or 5 times. I got to tell you, there was a person, the Brigadier. There's a person who, many times they say, don't know the hero. But there's someone that I met, and he was exactly what you would want to be, a true English gentleman. And he sat me down and he said, Mark, if John Pertwee said that to you, I can 100% tell you that he didn't mess around. That was exactly what he felt. And you've always been a great interviewer for me. I was just a 22-year-old kid, a geek amongst geeks. And to hear that the doctor said that I was an amazing interviewer was one of the true highlights of my young life. And I will never forget that feeling. I think I was on cloud nine for like the next 3 weeks. So obviously around about that time, the VHS videos came out. I got to watch a lot of the old episodes. And, you know, Venusia and Aikido, running around on three-wheeled motorbikes. One wonderful doctor. Who Bill is not used enough. That was John Pertwee. Gadget, James Bond, protecting the girls, fighting the monsters, the master.
Saving the world.
Those are the years of Pertwee. And then I also liked the fact that when he went to conventions, he really was the Doctor. He would come in costume. He came to America quite a lot in the late 80s. And you never really knew if it was John Pertwee or the Doctor. And I always remembered that because there is this thing about the Doctors, to be truly successful, they have to be an amalgamation of their actor part and also this character. But the best ones is where you can't see the join. And John Pertwee was not only a wonderful actor, but he was a wonderful Doctor. It's very tempting to forget these actors, but really the reason we still have the show is because they were that good.
Indeed.
Wow. So I got to follow that, huh? We're number 6, right?
We are.
Number 6.
That's where I have Matt Smith. And I can echo a lot of the good stuff that was said about Matt Smith. Mark, your story is awesome. Just that kind of eye contact thing. I've had similar stuff like that at conventions. Obviously, people not on his level, but just, you know, the creators and some people that have been inside. You know, and that's just me as a fan, really. But so I guess I can relate on that level. But one thing I will say about Matt Smith is I think it was a really cool idea that Stephen Moffat did for his final story about how he spent what was it, like 300 years defending that planet or that city or whatnot. Because now, 20 years from now, Matt Smith can be in his 60s or whatever, and he can still come back in the Doctor as the Doctor, and it makes sense because he got old and gray before he died. You know, his Doctor, of course. So, you know, there's some old school stuff about Matt Smith that I'll get to a little further on in the list as a teaser, but I think really, and it's not his fault, but yet if there's any negative going against it, it's that he was a good-looking guy. Well, and David Tennant was a good-looking guy too, but it's like it kind of went against what the tradition of the show was, because usually the Doctor was a goofy, middle-aged looking guy who was doing things, and now you got this cute younger guy doing these goofy things, and maybe I'm just sounding like an old crotchety fan when I say that.
Fish fingers and
Mark, you gonna say
custard,
something?
nuts.
But yeah, he did the goofiness well, and but he also did when he finally has to buckle up and do the hero thing, he does that well too. So
the best moment that I felt safe in his hand was when he looked at Eye Creature in that first episode in the face and said, basically, run. And I knew we were in safe hands.
Yeah, he put his stamp on the role immediately. And it was a great one. Yep. And my number 6 is the first Doctor, William Hartnell. Now, yeah, to me, when he was at his best, he was as good as any Doctor has ever been. I mean, stuff like the Dalek invasion of Earth, and
that's what I was going to say, but forgot. It's like the Daleks are doing their, we will go, we will do this, and the Doctor's just like, oh, will you now? Oh, he's being this pompous ass that he usually is to his companions, but he's doing it to the Daleks, and it was glorious.
Yep. Yeah, so he really established the character of the Doctor, and did a fantastic job of that. I mean, you could argue that some episodes are a little bit hampered by the format of the time, as having to stretch them out over X number of episodes. But there's a lot of fun to be had there, and I would say to anyone who's apprehensive about the first Doctor, don't sleep on William Hartnell. He's good. He's good, and I am a big booster of the Web Planet. It's sort of a polarizing William Hartnell episode, but it was super ambitious. It was super fun, and it's one that I go back to and I enjoy. It's a planet of bug people, and just done as best the special effects technology of the BBC in 1966 would allow. And you know what? I will defend that one. I will die on that. Is my Trenzalore. I will die on the Web Planet.
One of the great shames of the 60s is that they never got to make The Chase as a Cushing movie. And
that was supposedly going to happen, but I guess the third movie never happened.
If they had gotten over that hump and The Chase had been successful, who's to say we wouldn't have gotten shows like The Web Planet done as a movie with a budget? And it's always been at the back of my head that we were so close to seeing these concepts. See, this is why I like the old monsters brought back and updated, because they were solid back in the 60s. The Derby's a solid idea. But it's just got to be. That's the perfect example of why you'd need CGI to do that. You don't want a man in the suit. You do not want a Dractator from Frontios.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
one of the, it's one that they made. I know the entire series is still exists. It's one of those that wasn't lost, but they might as well just do an animated reconstruction of that, and it would probably be better because they could do all the
Well, here's where I had my moment for AI, which I never thought I would say. But AI now,
I almost said that.
AI now is becoming a moment where we will be able to go back in time and we will be able to remake Doctor Who in our images. As said many times, I do not want to be the producer of Doctor Who. I do not want that responsibility, and few fans should ever be allowed to be in that position. But AI is going to be able to make that dream come true, where we will be able to have full episodes come back and we will be able to make them in our image. And I think that's totally okay. I just don't want the actual show itself to go down that route.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. You don't want it to be the way forward. It's a way to fill in the gaps,
Yes,
and to celebrate the past. Yeah, and I think that's probably fair. Yeah. Yep. And that brings us to our top five, doesn't it?
it surely
Yep.
does.
Who you got, Mark?
Well, this is where we start working into my life, because I was a dyed in the wool, blinkers on, blinded by science in the 80s Doctor Who fan. And I loved it. I loved it more than anything else in the world. And over time, I've drifted away to be able to open my life up to other things, thank goodness. No one was as big as, of course, there were other bigger Doctor Who fans than me. But in my prime, when I started running conventions and I started, taking the copies of the Radio Times, cutting out pieces and putting it into a book, and going to autograph sessions and going to conventions and running conventions and collecting the merchandise, Sylvester McCoy showed up. And Time in the Rani isn't the best Doctor Who, but we had those four stories, and then we got plunked into Remembrance of the Daleks. And suddenly he burst out like a beautiful butterfly from a horrible cocoon. And Remembrance of the Daleks was such a fantastic Doctor Who to bring him into this comedic, because you got to remember, he was a comedic actor, wasn't really a drama actor, and dropped in with very little direction. And Andrew Cartmel and Ben Aronovich wrote those incredible scripts for him. And then the production tightened up. And despite the production of the show, J&T, who was always a very flamboyant and very loud producer, they managed to rein it all in, and Sylvester McCoy became a great doctor, and I was so pleased to be a Doctor Who fan in the 80s. It was just such a wonderful time. The 80s to me is the best time that I've ever been alive, and I loved it. I loved the freedom of just being, not having to worry about work, just being a young man who grew up with Doctor Who, and I'm so grateful that both him and Sophie Aldred, who I had the great pleasure of saying slept in my bed at a Doctor Who convention. Not with me. She was having a sleep. But I will tell you, walking into my hotel room and finding out that Sophie Aldred was having a rest in the hotel bed was one of the great parts of my life growing up at the age of 19.
Understood.
I mean no disrespect to Sophie, because we actually over the years, then we shared many interesting conversations, and I can't believe now that when I see Sophie, she's older like I am. Every time I think of Sophie, I just think of her being like 20. Even now, I can't get out of my head. He's one of the great Doctor Who companions. I wish we'd seen more of her. I love the idea of her, being the safe cracker and opening the safe, and Sylvester McCoy is in the safe, and he goes, "Where have you been?" That is one of the great unfilmed script pieces of Doctor Who. But yeah, Sylvester McCoy, I say, forget all the craziness, forget the juggling, forget the limericks, and just think of how you felt when you watched him in Curse of Fenric and Remembrance, and suddenly you're like, oh my goodness me, that is one of the great Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That almost makes me want to reshuffle my choices, but I will keep with what I have here.
I know
5
the feeling.
we have, right?
Yes.
5, that's where I have Eccleston. As you see on my chest here. I can't really say anything that we didn't already say. I mean, there were no bad Eccleston stories. Some were better than others, but there definitely weren't any that were bad. And I've said for years, my only complaint about Eccleston's run is that he just did the 1 year. And I mean, it's well documented as far as why he didn't go on. So I'm not going to go on that tangent. He does do Big Finish. So if you're have a hankering for stuff with Eccleston you haven't heard before, he does do the Big Finish stuff. And I mean, everything he did, even though it was just that one season, it kind of built up. And I can't really say, like I said, too much that hadn't already been said. So he was the perfect introduction to a new generation of fans. He was a great relaunch to the show, and so that's why I got him at number 5.
Lots of planets have a north.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. He was awesome. And that brings me to my number 5. And mine is Peter Capaldi, the 12th. Yeah. Okay. To me, he's the only one who could have worked as a classic Doctor. I think we kind of touched on that. Maybe not just because he's older, but just the general demeanor that he had. And yeah, even when the scripts weren't the best, he made the most of them. And when they were good, when they were on, he was close to untouchable, like heaven sent, like we mentioned. And another one I put up there is his speech from the two-parter with the Zygons. With the second part, I believe, was the Zygon inversion. He has the sit down and talk speech about the scale model of war.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about before.
The sit down and talk speech. To me, that was mind blowing. I still go back. That's probably one of the episodes of the modern era that I go back and watch the most, just because that's so powerful. And on top of that, his last season, I wish we had gotten a little more of that, because I loved his dynamic with Missy. Michelle Gomez being one of his companions. She's so good. she's another one on my list that I want to meet at a con because they work so well together. And yeah, I mean, if I could go on all night talking about how great Missy was, but I'd better leave it at that. And that puts us up to number 4.
Oh, you'll say number 4. Christopher Eccleston. So
Okay.
I'm not
Well,
gonna,
he had it more than me.
yeah, I'm not going to go through anything we've already said, except I'll say one thing. If you haven't seen The Second Coming, which was my clue that he would be an amazing doctor, he is basically the son of God, and he finds it out when he's like 30 years old, and the world is very disbelieving. I think that was possibly made by Russell T Davies as well, so that's why they had a working relationship. Check that out, find that. I have a copy, I think, on DVD that I haven't watched since like 2005, but I do remember watching that and going, we're in good hands. I love the writing of the first season, but I do remember distinctly when we found out he was leaving, that to me was a huge alarm bell for RTD, because I was like, why would you let this guy go? Because he rules. He absolutely rules this thing. Yeah, and he is the only modern Doctor who's really at the top of my list. So number 4, Christopher Eccleston. Hope I get to meet you one day.
Mm-hmm. All right, Seth, you're number 4.
My number 4, that's where I have Pertwee.
Ah.
And it was, I know there's that thing about the magic number of seasons being 3. Everybody does 3, except for Tom Baker, who did 7. Well, John Pertwee did 4. And really, I think it just comes down to, like we were talking about before, it's like it was a consistent thing. He knew who he was. They were kind of putting him in that James Bond role because there was that about 2 or 3 year run where he was banished on Earth, and but he nailed it every time, and you had no problem believing once he got back into the TARDIS on a regular basis. I think a Time Warrior is just one of the greatest Doctor Who stories of all time. It's one of those you could put any Doctor in the same position and it would work. And like Mark, you were saying, he was also such a good ambassador for the show as well. So I mean,
So many
maybe it's.
people have watched that. Spearhead from Space has been obviously re-released every single format. One of the first ones. It's the cleanest looking early Doctor Who episode.
Yeah, because I think it was on film. It was shot on film the entire time. Yeah,
and to me, again, take over the role so quickly. I mean, some of the stuff like him showering is silly, but my goodness me, when he puts the costume on, it's the same thing as Tom Baker. He's the Doctor.
Yeah, you had no trouble buying it. He's the Doctor. And the only other thing I'll add is it's like you look at his career outside of Doctor Who, and he did a lot of comedy. I think even Wars with Grummage had a lot of comedy in it, but yet his Doctor was like one of the more straight-laced ones. So I think it's also kind of a testament to his acting that here was a guy who mainly did comedy, but he was one of the more serious Doctors when he got into the TARDIS.
Absolutely. Yep. And that brings me to my number 4, which is Sylvester McCoy, the 7th Doctor. And yeah, I would echo what Mark said, where the show was really getting good again when it was put on hiatus. I mean, his second and third seasons are just are really outstanding stuff. I mean, Remembrance of the Daleks is my favorite episode of the show of the 80s, but it's up there with my favorites of the show in general. It's a outstanding piece of TV. And I love
I
the
think it was
idea
in that
of
top 10 that we did way back when. It mentioned that. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I love the idea of, this kind of silly little guy who's able to outwit demigods and destroy evil armies while waxing philosophical all the way. And
the one thing that did trouble for him was the silly umbrella and the silly question mark. I still remember when the toys came out and you could buy the sweater. I thought it was so cool to have a question mark sweater. But in retrospect, it's so dumb. And when they put him in a regular costume for the 1995 Kelly movie, that stuck with him sitting in the.
He looked great.
It was incredible. So I wish to have gotten a 40 with a slightly toned down costume.
It would have been nice. Yeah. Yeah. I won't hold it against them, but it would have been better. Sure. And hey, we're in the top 3. Wow. So who you got for number 3, Mark?
Well, I'd watched the guy on City TV for, maybe a year. How old was I? 10 years old. That's a very impressionable age. And I got to watch, Legopolis, one of my personal favorite Doctor Who episodes ever. And, he sits up and smiles into the camera, and Peter Davison was the Doctor. And he's my number 3. He was very impressionable age. I find that when you watch this stuff live and you're a fan, it's just a warm hug. Of course, Earthshock is one of the greatest Doctor Who episodes ever made. Even some of his worst, like Black Orchid, and I have such fond memories of Warriors of the Deep, even though it's really a silly episode. I just made a joke about the Dractators, but I absolutely adore Frontios. Frontios is it's just cheese, but it's such tasty cheese. The trouble is, you want to go back in some ways and edit these episodes and take out the creatures and make better ones and make them more like the wood lice that become balls and chase after people. But I don't.
What's the one where they had the Concorde?
That's Timefly.
Ooh,
Okay,
yeah.
Timefly. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's one of those that they remade.
Doctor
that
Who
special
got to
effects.
rent Concorde. Yeah. I mean, how many shows of the era and even movies? Nobody got to rent the Concorde. That didn't happen.
Special.
Instead, and that's going to come across as a spoiler that I'm a huge JNT fan, and I really, as many things as JNT did wrong, he did so many things right. He cast the right people. He cast people who wrote well. He was just a showman. And again, he's been dead so long now, and so many people wrote so many horrible things about him over the years. And I'll tell you that there's someone who didn't want to make bad Doctor Who. He wanted to make good Doctor Who. And I'm very proud to say that I didn't know him very well, but he came to one of my conventions and we wrote to each other. But J&T really was one of the guys who really moved Doctor Who forward. So I've often got a lot of time for his stories and his episodes. Plus, I was incredibly impressed with all young, and there's no better time to watch Doctor Who than when you're young. That's the problem. So I am choosing Davidson as my number 3.
Yeah, and you're very
Well, he
right.
had that saying. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but J&T had that saying, John Nathan Turner, and it is true. It absolutely is true. The memory cheats.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he is absolutely right when he says that.
Oh,
Your memory is not 100%.
And also, the memory doesn't. The memory doesn't. Not every time, because we do look at these things as I show Seth. I can go back, and I have probably watched something like Earthshock 200 times. The memory doesn't cheat with that. It's just wonderful television. Wonderful television. Some of the Ncuti episodes, some of the Whittaker episodes, I've watched once. And I can also say with conviction that there is a Capaldi episode, and it's something to do with being in the woods or some old house. I never watched that. I never even bothered to watch that episode. And to say to my 13 or 14-year-old self that there was a Doctor Who episode in my life that I would never have watched is almost inconceivable to me.
I bet it was in the Forest of the Night. That one has not a great reputation.
Yeah, I can't remember why I didn't watch it. I must have read a review or something. Just didn't make me want to watch it. I just can't remember why.
Now you got a visual. You got me a visual of Wallace Shawn walking into the TARDIS, going inconceivable.
You know what would be awesome? Wallace Shawn walking into the TARDIS as Grand Negus Zek. You know, if we finally get the Star Trek Doctor Who crossover that they are just begging to make happen, which isn't going to happen barring some massive, hideous media merger, but by golly, it would be
It's
fun.
happening in comics.
Yeah, it could happen in comics. Yeah, we'll have to settle for that, I suppose. Yeah. All right, Seth, who have you got for 3?
Number 3, that's where I have David Tennant. And again, can't really say much more than we haven't already said. I do know that David Tennant, I mean, he was so huge into Doctor Who that he actually did the Big Finish stuff before he was cast as Doctor Who. So you will actually hear him in supporting roles in the Big Finish stories and he just kind of thought, well, this is as close as I'm ever going to get to being Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of a cool story. And he does Big Finish, I think, to this day. And he did one of my favorite Big Finish crossovers stories, multi-Doctor stories, I should say. He did a story with Tom Baker. And I think it was the Out of Time series. So that's one of those dream crossovers that happened in Big Finish where Tennant meets Tom Baker. And you know, that's one of those things. You talk about AI. That's one of those things they could do, to take these Big Finish stories and add the visuals, and boy, you'd have some phenomenal Doctor Who.
Sure. Yep. And that comes to my number 3 now, I suppose, which would be the second Doctor, Patrick Troughton. Now, to me, he's probably the most important Doctor there ever was, because if he hadn't pulled off that switch, you know, from William Hartnell and gotten people to believe that he was the Doctor and to keep with the show, then there's really not much chance that we'd be talking about this today, is there? You know, the Daleks would have gone on in some form probably, but Doctor Who might be just a footnote. And yeah, I think as a pure actor, he's one of the finest Doctors there ever was. You know, he could do the humor, he could do the serious stuff. He was one of the more, I would say, nurturing personalities of the Doctor. You know, the speech to Victoria in Tomb of the Cybermen, where she's, you know, still processing everything that's happened to her recently, and he was very comforting to her. Very sort of, he could be warm and paternal when he wasn't disarming his enemies by playing dumb, and which he was awesome at. And they also had one of the best companions in Jamie McCrimmon, and yeah, I've got him very high on my list. Tomb of the Cybermen is one I can go back to anytime. I loved The Enemy of the World. I was really happy when that was discovered, and I liked that a lot more than I thought I would.
Fantastic.
And The Invasion, you know, for a longer episode, which is another one I would say do not sleep on, just because it's black and white, kids. You know, it's Patrick Troughton is still awesome.
Well, just to interrupt, he's at 11 on my list. Everything you said is 100% correct. But if you've never seen The Box of Delight, which is the 1984 BBC TV adaptation of the book, there's some wonderful Patrick Troughton footage in that fantasy epic. And then also, of course, the fact that he was so anti doing conventions in the 80s, and then he got talked into it and he just loved them. And then, if I remember,
he was like Shatner.
Didn't he die at a convention?
I believe so. Yeah, he was in the States, wasn't he?
I remember that in England at the time, and I was absolutely shocked. You know, we'd just seen him in The Two Doctors, and he had such a great performance in that, and The Three Doctors too. But yeah, he's low down on my list for only the reasons that he wasn't really part of my childhood, I feel. But I celebrate where he is on your list.
And that's fair. You know, that goes back to what you said about Doctor Who really making a big impression on you when you're a kid. And yeah, like I can remember, I first was exposed to Doctor Who in the mid 80s on PBS. And so I got to see Tom Baker. And then after a while, this funny guy with the curly hair was gone, and there was this blonde haired guy. It was Peter Davison. And after that, it gets blurry, but it's very possible I saw Colin Baker as well. But the memory is a little foggier, but I definitely saw uh, Tom and Peter, and I can remember some specific sequence of episodes. And yeah, Doctor Who does make a strong impression on one's mind as a child. So, and we're my goodness, we're up to number 2 on our list, aren't we?
Number 2.
Unfortunately, here where I might get a little misty-eyed. So one of the reasons I do the show with Seth is that I want what I feel about this show to come out on camera. I want my thoughts retained, not because I'm important, because I'm really not. If you ever really wanted to know why I was the way I was, who I am, it's because of my grandfather, it's because of my parents, and it's because of Doctor Who. Because we all need something in our lives that kind of like builds the blocks and makes you who you are. And for me, it was Colin Baker at number 2. I was a young man. I was impressionable. I'd started recording Peter Davison episodes, and here's this guy in a loud, crazy suit being over the top, and he was just incredible. I remember the interviews even before he became Doctor Who, and he was so excited to be walking into this role that he thought was. He'd played villains for most of his life on TV in a show called The Brothers. I just remember 1986, I was in Blackpool at the Doctor Who exhibition, and there was all this kerfuffle at the entrance. We were about to leave. We were at the merchandise booth on the way out. Bloody Colin Baker walked in to the Doctor Who exhibition, and I was 15 years old. My brother, my mother, my younger brother Aaron, who was 5 years old, wearing Doctor Who in full costume in front of me. And unlike Matt Smith, I was on like Flynn. So he walked up to us, he shook my hand, he said, "Hello, hello." He introduced himself as Colin Baker. I knew it wasn't the Doctor, but part of my head was like, "Oh my God, it's the Doctor." I think Nicola Bryant was there as well. It was some kind of pub. It's been documented that this event happened, so it's not a fever to my imagination. So Colin locked onto my 5-year-old brother, who was being held by my mother, and he said, "What would you like, little boy?" As he was kind of motioning towards the merchandise booth. And I'm like, I'm not thinking like, oh, it's a pen or a pencil. I'm like, oh my God, this is your chance, Aaron. Ask him for a Dalek. Ask him for something from the exhibition. So I am like, I'm just like, my eyes are like saucers. My head is going to explode. And my little brother turns his head to Colin Baker and he goes, "Nothing." And Colin goes, "Nothing?" And I'm standing there, I'm seething. I'm like, "You blew it! You blew it! He's asking you. You could have asked for his costume. You blew it." Well, so after that, I met Colin at several conventions, and one of the proudest. I've had many proud moments with Doctor Who. One of my proudest is Alistair Pearson, the great Target book cover artist. A few years later, 1991, I invited him to a convention, and he says, "Mark, I've known you for a while. It's about time we put your initials. That if you knew him and you were a fan, he would put your initials hidden away on the front cover of the Target book." He said, "Who's your favorite?" I said, "Colin Baker." And he said, "Well, the Sixth Doctor Handbook is coming out. Just look at the front cover when it comes out." And so for all the rest of eternity, my initials, MPS, Mark Patrick Short, are on the front cover of the Sixth Doctor Colin Baker Handbook.
Wow.
And I have to tell you that I was so damn proud. Colin came to my 1991 Opera convention called Doctor Who: The End of an Era. We put him in a side room. We held it in a movie theater. Like, you know how a movie theater is square and oblong? The side room at the back is where we had Nicola Bryant, JNT, all these people, Colin Baker. And he came in and he's like, "Where's Mark?" And he said, "Why are we in this small room?" Because the room was very small. And they came for the cost of like petrol and a sandwich. And I want to say to everyone, and I want to say to Colin, if we ever saw this, thank you for trusting a 21-year-old kid to come to a convention. We made several $1,000s for cot or pounds for cot death, which has been eliminated since they found out the reasons that these babies died. Colin was my doctor, referring back to that comment, you were my doctor. Colin was my doctor. I will always be grateful for the way him as a person affected me and treated me, not as a child, but as a fellow human being. He signed my autographs. He asked me many questions about me as a person. And I haven't seen him for 30 years. But I will tell you that some of who I am, not the murderous, rampaging, trying to kill Perry, Colin Baker, just a wonderful ambassador for the show, a wonderful actor, very mistreated by the BBC. Many years after he was Doctor Who, was in Doctor Who. No, it was The Ultimate Adventure, the one that started with John Pertwee at the Wimbledon Theatre.
Mm-hmm.
He got to wear a much more toned down version of his costume with purple. He stepped out of the TARDIS, and I just was like, my God, there's how it could be. And as I said, he was always a wonderful person to me. And he can't, unfortunately, be number one because I already know the answer for all of us. I can feel
I think we already
but I will tell you, until really when this question about who are your 10 favorite doctors, he would always be number one on my list. He can't be number one on my list now because what we'll get into. But I will tell you that I just Colin Baker is my doctor. He's my doctor. That makes him number one, but not. And Colin, thank you so much for being a part of my life.
Oh, that's awesome, Mark.
Hopefully somebody will be able to get this podcast in front of Colin Baker. But
I don't even really care. I just think it's a nice thing to say what you feel. And I don't think a lot of people ever do that. And sometimes it can be kind of like a bit much. But I always said all over. No, I always said if I got to see him, I would give him a much more truncated version of that speech. I appreciate you guys for letting me put that to camera. But like I said, Doctor Who is meaningful to us three chaps, isn't it? It's more than a TV show. It's become part of the fabric of our life. And as such, we should celebrate that in the only way that we can, which is talking about it.
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
to follow that, yeah. Well, my number two, I'm actually glad you guys had him pretty high up on your list as well. That number two, that's where I have Patrick Troughton. I thought I was going to be like the odd one out by putting him so high, but I can tell you why. A lot of the characteristics and the mannerisms that would become the Doctor for generations to come started with Patrick Troughton. He was the first Doctor to eat jelly babies. He was the first one to use a sonic screwdriver. And Matt Smith was very much inspired by Patrick Troughton. So you'll see all those years later, for anybody watching or listening to this, if you like Matt Smith, go watch Patrick Troughton episodes, and you'll see some similarities there in the way he reacts, the way he's running and dodging explosions, and the bow tie and the Raggedy Man look. He got that from Patrick Troughton. And like you said, Greg, the enemy of the world. That was kind of an odd one out because it wasn't the monster of the month like so many Doctor Who stories were. That was the Doctor versus basically the Bond villain.
Mm-hmm.
And the real twist in that is the Bond villain looks exactly like the Doctor. So you had Patrick Troughton against evil Patrick Troughton,
Mm-hmm.
and you totally bought him in both roles. So he was the most important, I think, in history because, like you were saying before, about transitioning from Hartnell and trying to make the show go on without him. If that hadn't worked, the show would have been it would have been like an answer to trivia questions in Trivial Pursuit or something.
I think that's a fair assessment. Yep. And that brings me to my number 2, which would be the third Doctor, John Pertwee. To me, he's the most consistently good. His episodes are the most consistently good of any Doctor, and I would credit the steady production team for that. Having Barry Letts producing pretty much the entire run, and
What to say? That was the Barry Letts run, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Terrence Dix, every time. Terrence Dix.
Terrence Dix.
And Philip Hinchcliffe was the final year of, if I have it right, with maybe I have it wrong, but I don't know.
I feel like I'm name dropping all the time, but Terrence Dix, these people are the best at what they did because somehow they keep the ship going straight and almost never make a bad episode of Doctor Who. It's quite amazing, actually, really.
Yeah.
I think Barry Letts may have actually written Enemy of the World, now that I think about it. I could be wrong, but I think Barry Letts
No, that was
Second Doctor stories.
Malcolm Hulke, I think.
Malcolm Hulke, another great talent, yes.
I do love it when all those years of spending days and hours remembering Doctor Who, actually, even though my memory today is absolutely awful, when it comes to remembering Doctor Who stuff, it's just like sharp as a tack.
Yeah. I've got this scarf here, and I wear it out and about occasionally, not when it's cold outside, but when I just feel like dressing as a Time Lord. But
it's weird. I don't remember John Pertwee wearing that, though.
But if I was going to buy another Doctor Who costume item, it would be John Pertwee's jacket from the Time Warrior, that green one with the huge collar. I love it.
I always do this on Seth's episodes. Please, if there's a member of anything out there that can get anything done, what are you doing? Sean Pertwee as the Doctor in a television. Don't screw this up. The guy is getting older. Every hour, every month is precious. He wants to do it. The fans want to see it. We've seen evidence of what he would look like dressed as the Doctor. What is wrong with you, BBC? Do it.
Yeah. What are you waiting for?
Allow me a moment here, please. Yeah. Just this is how I think it would be perfect. You just do it as a stinger. You could either have one of the modern companions walking around saying, "Oh, the Doctor's going to be around here," and the TARDIS materializes, and then maybe it goes back to the companions, and as they hear the TARDIS door open, and, what? I thought you'd be the Doctor. Or you could just have the TARDIS just materialize, just if you want to have it just in one shot, and then the door opens, and there's Sean Pertwee, decked out as the third Doctor, saying, "Well, of course I'm the Doctor. You're expecting someone else?" And then
I cannot tell you. I've got two great frustrations in my life. One is that McGann be making episodes, and number two is that Sean Pertwee thing. It just annoys me. The BBC hasn't got the vision to do it.
And he's gone on record. He's saying he'd do it if asked.
Well, I do believe that I had the great privilege of announcing my first number one, but I'm not going to do it yet because we're going to take a side skew here.
Mm-hmm.
We are now at like between number two and number one. I would like to give honorable mention.
Okay. This is where we do the, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, well, actually, I'll do it in reverse order. Number three is Peter Cushing.
Mm-hmm.
I
Okay.
love Peter Cushing in those Doctor Who movies. I've watched those movies hundreds of times again. I still can't wrap my head around the fact that he's an Earthling or the fact that the TARDIS looks like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory inside. To see the Daleks
They look like
with a
erectors.
budget, incredible. Joanna Lumley as the Doctor in The Curse of Fatal Death. Sexy, because obviously I remember her from the New Avengers and also as Silly Patsy in Absolutely Fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible as the female Doctor in a comedy show. And then finally, you guys may never have seen it, but it's on YouTube. I always felt comfortable until the script came through with Ncuti because of one actor. And it's a comedic piece and it's silly as heck. But watch the Lenny Henry show with Doctor Who because it is a comedy thing, but it's incredible.
I've seen it. I have seen it.
And anybody who's watching this hasn't seen it, look for it. Lenny Henry, Doctor Who. It is silly, but I just love that silliness in that. And he is just like on fire. So watch that. Honorable mentions.
Well, if we're doing honorable mentions, okay, yeah, then I would definitely put Patrick or Peter Cushing in there for the same reasons you said. I mean, yeah, the TARDIS looked like an erector set, but and you could probably put Rowan Atkinson in there because he's one of those guys that you could see. I mean, in that time in the '80s, early '90s, if they would have done a relaunch like in the early '90s, I could see maybe that working. You're English smart, so you probably know more about that than I would. But I think people could have bought him as Doctor Who. And then I know there's probably going to be some that I'm gonna forget now. But I mean, can I put the actual doctors in this honorable mention here?
You sure can.
As far as
Your
that?
list, man. You do it.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll take the heat here because that uh, I had on my list at number 11. That's where I had Sylvester McCoy. And Mark, when you talked about all that stuff about, uh, and I'm like, yeah, Curse of Fenric was really good, and yeah, Remembrance of the Daleks was really, maybe I should have put him higher. And I'd also put, that's where I put Paul McGann was number 12. I had Jodie Whittaker at number 13 because there have been people that were a lot harder on those years that Chibnall had than I was. And even the people who were harder on that show than I was were saying it's not Jodie's fault. Jodie's fine. It's the blankety blank blank writing. I'm sanitizing it there. And that's also where I put John Hurt as well because he just had that one special. He's done Big Finish. I haven't really heard much of his stuff in Big Finish, but yeah, that kind of rounds out my honorable mentions there.
Mm-hmm.
It's all body, a little thin.
My honorable mentions, well, the only reason they aren't in my top 10 is because there just aren't enough spots. There's only 10 numbers, so I have to put Peter Davison and Matt Smith just on the outskirts there, and I put Rowan Atkinson there as well because Curse of Fatal Death is just a whole lot of fun.
It's a perfect Doctor Who name if you're going to make fun of the names of Doctor Who episodes.
So, of course, now I have the great privilege, because I feel that our number one is all going to be the same, of going to, of course, reveal my number one. And I will say that this person has just entwined ourselves in our lives, has seemingly always been there, been an amazing ambassador for the show, is cannot be scraped from the mind in any way. Yeah, and of course I'm going to say that name is Nkuti Gat. No, I'm going to say that name.
That's exactly what I thought you were going to do.
I got you all, didn't I? I am privileged and proud to say I lived in a life when I got to see first Prince Cora from the Sinbad movie as portrayed by Tom Baker in one of the true early villain roles that burned into my head. And then, again, a very impressionable age, probably 7 or 8, I got to watch, Logopolis and the Horns of Nimon. Maybe not the greatest Doctor Who episode, but here's the thing: when Tom Baker is in it, he's the greatest thing in the episode. So almost nothing else matters. What I can't believe is that 50 years later, still seemingly as powerful as he was then. Watch him.
Yeah, he's still doing.
He's up as attack, nearly 100 years old, and every time I see him, it just makes me a child again. And watch it. We often say you can never go back. The memory cheats. JNT was right apart from one thing about Tom Baker. When you watch his old episodes, I'll just flash an episode on. I watch the whole thing. I can't help it. I've seen the 200 times, 400 times, and he captures me like no human being can. He is, to me, one of the greatest actors who's ever lived. He's one of the greatest personalities. He's one of the great raconteurs and comedians. He's number one on my list because, as much as I love Colin, and he's part of my era, Tom, I cannot deny, has been the Doctor. He will always be the Doctor. He will always be Doctor Who personified. And he is my number one, Tom freaking Baker.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, I can't really follow up anything to add to what you've already said. I mean, Robot, not the best Doctor Who story. That was his first. But within moments after he puts on the scarf, I mean, there was the moment where he's jump roping with Harry, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's a Doctor. You could totally see Patrick Troughton doing that too. I mean, quite frankly. Uh, but it's like once he steps out as the Doctor with the scarf and he, reprograms the computer and all that, you totally buy him. And then I think the next story after that was Genesis of the Daleks. What do
No,
you think
it's
about Genesis of the Daleks?
Ark in Space.
Yes, Ark in Space, and then I think Genesis. I want to say, yeah,
It's an Antaran experiment.
yeah.
Turn in your Doctor Who card now. Turn it in back at the library.
Yeah. But yeah, Ark in Space, one of the all-time greatest Doctor Who stories, and then Genesis of the Daleks was also in his first year.
I have the right?
Do I have that right?
The man who 4 episodes before came out of the TARDIS dressed in a Viking helmet.
So, and over here on the other side of the pond in the States, I do have faint memories. I didn't put it together at the time until afterwards, but he played a bad guy on Remington Steele, and with Pierce Brosnan, who went on to be James Bond. So there's, in some sort of alternate universe, there's this Doctor Who versus James Bond thing that can go on in your head if you watch an episode of Remington Steele.
Sometimes,
Tom Baker.
Sometimes I get a little disappointed with life, right? Sometimes life is not everything we want it to be, especially in these dark political times. One thing I will always be grateful for is that I got to live at a time with William Shatner and Tom Baker and take that to the bank. We were lucky, lucky people to have those two in our lives.
Indeed. I mean, I'm sipping my water out of a mug with his picture on it.
Well, you have his scarf. I have his scarf. I have been taken recently to going out and wearing my Tom Baker scarf. Why? Because I just am proud to be a Doctor Who fan. I'm proud to understand what it was like to be a fan before it was cool to be a fan. I think we all share that. You know, that as you say, the wilderness years, people would laugh at us for being science fiction fans. But the truth of the matter is, we were ahead of everybody else.
Absolutely. And we wear that as a badge of honor. Yeah.
I do. I just wish people then had understood how cool we were.
Hmm. Yep. I've got an autograph from Tom here. I ordered it
Yeah,
from his website
yeah.
just a few months ago, and because I've accepted that I'm never going to get to meet the man in person, and I kind of don't want to because I don't want him to travel in and put himself at risk. At his
Yeah.
age, I want him to be wrapped in bubble wrap and preserved and healthy forever. But even in this 8x10, his personality shines through. I mean, he signed it. I had to make it out to my son and I. He signed it down his scarf to Greg N. Harrison, Tom Baker, and you can just picture him writing that and just that gleam in his eye. Oh, it's lovely to meet you. And
Would you agree? Because I've always felt this. He's the only person on Earth where I'm genuinely not sure that he's not an alien.
well, him and maybe Tommy
Yep.
Wiseau.
It started in Doctor Who and has just gotten worse because the stuff that comes out of his mouth, if you've ever watched him interviewed or just talk about his life, not only is his voice like liquid gold pouring out of a cup
Mhm.
onto a bump,
He could read a dictionary too, which would be interesting.
he his command of story and the ability to talk is second to none. He's close to Brian Blessed, but
Mhm.
Tom Baker is leaps
Mhm.
bounds ahead of him. But as I said, I knew going into this, the minute that I changed my number one from Colin to Tom, because I just had to. I had to finally admit that he is the best. I mean, I had to. And then I knew that he would be everyone else's too. And I make no apologies for it, and certainly not to my younger,
Mhm.
who would probably be like, "But it's Colin." Um, I'm so pleased we all came to the same place because the truth is, to even suggest that Matt Smith is the best Doctor is an impossibility when you're confronted with the titanic nature of Tom Baker.
Agreed. He's the standard by which all others are judged. He was put on this earth to be Doctor Who, and like you said, we were lucky enough to exist on this little planet at the same time as him.
We were.
City of Death is one of my favorite episodes of TV, not just of Doctor Who, but just any TV show ever. Period. I
Whenever
think it's
I
masterpiece.
whenever I walk around a new city for the first time, you know what comes into my head? And
Yeah.
again, you're either a gigantic geek. One more story for you,
Yes.
people at home. So I am 8 years old. I'm on a bus trip with the school. We go over a bridge, a giant marsh, and I see a blue box. And then we're going at like 40, 50 miles an hour. It's gone. And I go to some school trip. Many years later, I ask someone, "Oh, did they film Doctor Who around here?" "Oh, yeah, we filmed that at the Snape Maltings in the marshes." That's the one where the green guys are RAF Bentwater's employees, all covered in green paint, and they're called Swampies. And there's a giant marsh creature called the Parrot of Krog. So what I realised many years later was my school bus drove by the TARDIS that was parked for only a few days next to the road in Snape, in Suffolk. and that I had indeed witnessed not Tom, it was just the TARDIS. But I had seen the TARDIS with my own 8-year-old eyes. And again, you cannot take any of this out of me. I have drifted over the years away from Doctor Who slightly, but my love of Doctor Who is so in my DNA that even being here talking to you guys about these little parts of my life brings me to misty tears.
Oh, that is absolute magic.
And I want to say thank you. We've been recording these podcasts for many, many years. I've always enjoyed doing it. I know, over the years, I've gotten collectors call. MeTV has kind of taken over my life. I have a brand new band now, well past prime. I'm really collecting
I've been to the show. It's very good.
www.propstop, thepropstop.wordpress.com and www.propstopstore.com are my businesses, and also my love of TV and film. I just wanted to say thank you very much for indulging my love of Doctor Who, letting my words live on, which is important to me, which is why I write and talk about, my love of this hobby. And Greg, I for the first time ever, I love this. I hope we get to do this more often, where we can examine movies and examine TV. You can see my face, you can see my collection behind me.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that this is the start of maybe a new part of this whole thing. Because as I get older, I like not to tell people what to think. That's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
But what I want to do is tell people that there are more things than Doctor Who out there, and also at the same time drop a few of the nuggets of information that is in this large cranium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'm delighted as can be that you were able to come on board with me and Seth. Mark, always am. Always a pleasure, and I know we'll do this again.
Yeah.
There's much fertile ground to be had in the Who-universe, if you call it that. Who-universe, Whovian universe. I don't know. We were fans before Whovian was a term, so I feel weird calling it that, but for want of a better term, that's what it is.
I was just a Doctor Who fan. I don't know. This Whovian thing came from America.
Sounds like something Americans would come up with.
We
Yeah.
don't want that. We were just Doctor Who fans, and guess what? We can still be just that.
Yes.
Yeah. And in case you couldn't tell from the posters behind me, Star Wars is always going to be my first geek love, but Doctor Who is right up there. And again, I have you two gentlemen to thank me for getting me into this yawning abyss that is all things Doctor Who. And it's just like I will always love stepping into the TARDIS every now and then, just to it's just a different geekery. It's a different form of science fiction than Star Wars or Star Trek or all that, and even superheroes. It just it travels in waves for somebody like me, but Doctor Who is always going to be a regular part of my life from here on.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I take pleasure in having helped inspire you to that, and I have massive respect for you always for having started at the very beginning and watched it the whole way through. That is a massive undertaking, and that will always impress me, and I'm flattered that I was able to play a part in your Doctor Who journeys.
But yeah, Geekville Radio, a lot of Doctor Who stuff there as well. And we're doing National Podcast Post Month. So if you tune in now, you're going to get like a lot of shows through the end of the month. So, okay, I refrain now. I got my indulgence in.
Yeah, very good. Yes. Yeah, and with that, we wind up this show and keep watching Doctor Who, and we'll be back next time.